of Srimati Radharani are her pure desire to serve and please Krishna, and she has absolutely no other desire. That's all she wants in this world, is to please and serve Krishna. And second, that her compassion, her heart is always melted in love for Krishna and in feelings of compassion for all living beings. And it's these two qualities, mainly her love for Krishna, that nobody could understand, that not even Krishna could understand. And Krishna said to Radharani that, I don't know what your heart is like, I don't know what your mood is like, but I want to know. And so he said, I'm going to come in your mood. So we all know that Krishna and Srimati Radharani, they appeared in the forms that we know about 5,000 years ago, but Krishna he didn't understand what Srimati Radharani's love was like for him. And so he said, I'm going to come in your mood. And Radharani thinks that Krishna's dark complexion is so irresistibly attractive that it will get spoiled when he falls or faints. So she thought that here's Krishna and his darkish complexion, and if he comes with that complexion, people are going to be so attracted by him, and if he falls or faints because of his mood, he'll get hurt. And so she covers him with her complexion, which is like a golden hue, and that's how he gets the emotion and complexion of Srimati Radharani. And so he comes down about 500 years later in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're very lucky to have Nitai Gauranga, and so he comes down in a golden complexion. So he's got the color and the mood of Srimati Radharani. So everyone thinks he's Krishna, or he portrays himself to be a servant of Krishna. Only his dear disciples, his most inner confident devotees know that he's actually Krishna. But he comes to taste that mood of Srimati Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya came, and out of all his years on this earth, he spent about 24 years in Jagannath Puri. He grew up in Navadvip and spent his childhood pastimes there. And then when he took sannyas, he came to Jagannath Puri and spent, I think, about 18 years of his life in Jagannath Puri. And one of his most famous pastimes in Jagannath Puri was the Jagannath Rath Yatra. But before we go on to explain, to talk about that pastime, who is Lord Jagannath? So I asked Nikhil to kindly put up our painting of Lord Jagannath. And you'll see he looks very different from what we know Krishna to look like. Cowherd boy, bluish complexion, holding a flute, peacock feather in his hair. Jagannath looks a little different. And there's a few different stories of how he came in this form. So one of them, which is probably one of the most famous, it happened in the Skanda Purana, and there was a king by the name King Indradyumna. And he had heard from people, from devotees, from people in his kingdom, of this deity of Krishna called Nilamadava. And Nilamadava means, is a blue colored, and he appeared in Nilachala, in the blue mountain, in a blue cave. So he thought, I have to find this Nilamadava. He had this intense desire that I need to go find this deity of Krishna, Nilamadava. So he sent people everywhere. He sent his ministers, he sent his devotees, his servants, everywhere to look for Nilamadava. Everybody came back empty. They said we couldn't find him, except one of his ministers. And this minister's name was Vidyapati. And Vidyapati, he traveled, and he found a village of Shabara people. And he met one of the priests there, and he stayed at his house for some time. And he noticed something unusual about the king, about the man whose house he was staying at, whose name was Vishvasu. And he noticed that every night he would go somewhere, and he would come back early in the morning smelling so fragrant, like incense, flowers, beautiful essential oils. And he was wondering that what is happening. And after some time of being a guest at this man's house, he at the time married the daughter of this Vishvasu. And then after some time he asked his daughter, where does your father go every night? Every night he goes, he slips away, comes back smelling exotic and, with the flowers and incense. And so reluctantly, the wife said, my father goes every day to worship the deity of Nilamadava. And Vidyapati was overjoyed. He said, finally I can go with good news to the king that we found the deity of Nilamadava. But his wife said that my father will never ever take you. Nobody is allowed to go inside, only he does the worship of this deity. But he pushed and he pushed and he pushed, and finally his wife, asked her father that, please can you take my husband to have darshan of Nilamadava? So the father reluctantly agreed, but he said, I will only take him if he's blindfolded. So he doesn't know the way that I'm going, and he doesn't know the way coming back. So the next day Vidyapati was blindfolded, but his wife put around his dhoti a little bag of mustard seeds. So as he followed the father-in-law, he would drop mustard seeds everywhere he went. And he went into the cave, and the father-in-law undid his blindfold, and there before him was the beautiful deity of Nilamadava. So he stayed for the whole worship and then came back down in the morning. And then after some time, he left, and he went to the king, and he told King Indradyumna that I have found Nilamadava. I have found the deity that you've been searching for. And the king was overjoyed, he was ecstatic. So he quickly went, they went with a whole party, a whole army, followed Vidyapati, and Vidyapati knew he dropped those mustard seeds, so little mustard plants would have grown, followed the yellow flowers up the hill, and they got to the cave, and the deity wasn't there. The deity of Nilamadava had vanished, and the king was beyond upset, unimaginably upset. And then he was about to give up his life, but in the cave a voice, Krishna came to him in a dream, and he said, don't worry, I am Nilamadava, I will come to you in another form. You go. So I'm very quickly skimming over this story. It's a lot longer, and I'm skimming over a lot of details and names. But he said, you go to this one place, and there will be a log of wood floating. And this log of wood will have specific signs, Shankha, Chakra, Padma, Gada. So you will know that this is the divine log of wood. And you get that, and I will come out of that form. I will be carved from that form. So King Indradyumna was pacified, and he went and he found that log of wood. And even to carry it out, it wasn't any easy ordeal. Anyway, he got the piece of wood, and he got all the best carvers in the country to come. But as soon as anyone tried to carve Krishna out of that wood, all of their tools broke. And so finally an elderly architect came. And he was actually the architect of the demigods, Vishvakarma, but disguised as this old man. And he said, I will carve your deities under one condition. I do it behind closed doors, and you don't disturb me at all. The moment you disturb me, I will leave from this place. So King Indradyumna said, that's fine. You give me Nilamadava. So he went behind closed doors, and the architect, carpenter, sculptor, whatever you want to call him, Vishvakarma, he started, chiseling and carving the deity. And the king was constantly just pacing up and down outside the door. And after a few days, after about 18, 19 days, he couldn't hear any noises anymore. So he was wondering, what's going on? This man said he was carving my deities, and, I can't hear any noise. So he really wanted to go in, but his minister said no. Remember, he told you that if the moment you disturb him, he'll stop whatever he's doing and he'll disappear. But he waited 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and the third day he couldn't wait any longer, and his wife urged him, no, you go check what's happening. And so King Indradyumna, he pushed open the doors, and the architect, Vishvakarma, he vanished. And he was left with 3 forms of the Lord. So, as you know what Jagannath looks like, and Vishvakarma, King Indradyumna thought that he has no hands, his feet were unfinished, his eyes, he just looked like an unfinished deity of Krishna. He thought, oh, I've disturbed Vishvakarma, the carver, and now I'm left with these unfinished deities of Krishna. And again, he was about to end his life, but he lay down there, and Krishna Nilamadava appeared in his dream, and he said, no, this is the form in which I am meant to appear. This is me, Nilamadava, you worship me in this form. So from that day onwards, King Indradyumna established the worship of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra in Orissa, in Jagannath Puri, and it's been going on. And he asked Lord Jagannath for 2 boons. He said, 1, that I don't want any son. And Jagannath was like, everybody asked for the opposite. All kings would ask for, give me a son to continue my legacy. He said, no, I don't want a son, because I don't want the son to then claim this temple property as his own. This is your temple, and it should always remain your temple. And the second thing he said, because he said a few things, and he said that please allow your darshan to stay open for most of the day. So when you go to Jagannath Puri today, there's only a few hours of the day that the darshan stays closed. Most of the day it's open. And then the third thing he said is that, please allow me to feed you so much that your hands are never dry. You know, sometimes when we sit to eat and then after we finish eating, you know, the hands will get dry. But Jagannath is fed so many times during the day that his hands are never dry. And Jagannath is very famous for its prasadam. So to this day, Jagannath is worshipped in that form. So it's Krishna, it's Nila Madhava, non-different, but he just looks a little bit different. So that's one story of how Jagannath manifested. Now the second story is, we all know that Krishna grew up in Vrindavan. After he'd killed all the demons, after he had killed Kamsa and Mathura, then it was time to go fulfill his kingly duties in Dwarka. And he left the Vrajavasis who were heart-stricken, who they didn't know what to do with themselves. He left them and he went to Dwarka. Now in Dwarka, all of the queens of Dwarka, they heard of how much the Vrajavasis loved Krishna. They knew Krishna's pastimes there, but they never experienced anything like that in Dwarka. Because Krishna was different. He was a king. He was in a mood of awe and reverence. So one day all the queens, they got together and they wanted to find out what was Krishna like in Vrindavan. What was the love of his devotees in Vrindavan. So they asked the one person that was in Dwarka that also was in Vrindavan. So they asked Mother Rohini, Lord Balaram's mother. And they said, you tell us what was Krishna like, what was the love of the Vrajavasis like. And she said, I'll tell you, but someone needs to make sure, stand outside the palace and guard that Krishna or Balaram don't hear. Because the minute that they hear about these pastimes, they'll want to leave Dwarka, run to Vrindavan and never return. So they said, okay, Subhadra, they told Krishna's sister, you go stand outside the door and you make sure that nobody, Krishna or Balaram don't come in. So then Mother Rohini started telling all the queens what Krishna was like, his pastimes, the love of the Vrajavasis, and Subhadra heard. And she became stunned. Her hands just went beside her. Her eyes became wide, and she became almost like petrified, like she didn't know what to do. She was just, those stories that she heard, the qualities, the pastimes, they created so much ecstasy in her. It's difficult for us to understand because we don't feel those types of emotion. You know, the most we'll feel is like happiness or sadness. That's pretty much it. But these are emotions beyond our understanding. And she just became stunned. And she couldn't move, she couldn't talk, she was just standing there. Then after a while, Balaram walked by. And he said, Subhadra, what are you doing? But she couldn't talk, she couldn't move, she was just standing there. So Balaram was just standing outside the palace, and then he began to hear Mother Rohini describing the glories of Krishna, the Vrajavasis, his pastimes. And his arms went out, and his eyes went wide, and he just became stunned, like wood. And then he stayed there, right next to Subhadra Devi. And then after a while, the person who we didn't want to, to hear the pastimes, he walked by, Krishna walked by. And he said, Dauji, Subhadra, what are you doing here? Why are you standing like this? And then he stood by the door, and he heard the pastimes, he heard the glories, he heard the qualities, he heard about Vrindavan, the gopis, Srimati Radharani, and he became so ecstatic. His arms came out, his eyes became wide, and he just became stunned. And he stood there. So that's another story of how Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra are in the forms that they're in. So I was listening to a class by Amarendra Prabhu, and he said that Jagannath's form, obviously we can see it's very different from Krishna. His face is very black, it's round, his eyes are big, and he was saying that Krishna's eyes can be glorified, in so many ways, and it's endless. You can hear glorification of his eyes in the Bhagavatam, lotus-like shape. But he said there's something special about Jagannath's eyes, and he noted down 3 points that were very special. So number one, that his eyes are circular, they're very round. Krishna's eyes, as you know, they're like an oval shaped, they're like a petal shape. So these are round, which means that he can see and give his blessings to devotees in all the directions. North, south, east, west, heavenly planets, low planetary systems, everyone. No one is escaped from his blessings. The second point he said, that his eyes are always open. right? They're always open. And they're like magnifying glasses, they're very big. So he sees the good in the devotees and he magnifies that. And he says, but when there are faults of the devotees, he becomes like Venkateshwara Balaji. Who's seen Balaji? What are his eyes like?
Yeah.
No, his eyes are closed.
Closed, yes.
So when you see the fault of the devotees, his eyes are closed. And then Prabhu was mentioning a nice point that in Vaishnava communities, sometimes it's the opposite. When we want to see the faults of devotees, our eyes are big and open. And when we want to see the good, they become closed. So this is a special feature of Jagannath, that he's always looking for the good in his devotees. And the third feature is he doesn't have eyelids. So his eyes never close for a moment. We can go in front of Jagannath and we will blink, and that hinders our darshan for that moment. But with Jagannath, he's always there and he's always seeing us. In the Gopi Geet, the songs of the gopis to Lord Krishna, they curse Lord Brahma. They say they curse Lord Brahma, the creator, for creating eyelids. Because every time they blink, their vision of Krishna is stopped. And they said one blink, maybe one moment. But you put so many blinks together and it will equal a week, a year, and for that amount of time, I'm not able to see Krishna. And then they curse the opposite, that when Krishna leaves Vrindavan, you created eyelids so that they can stay open even though Krishna's not there. I want them to stay shut because I can't see Krishna before me, but now I'm forced to keep them open even though he's gone. So this is a special feature of Jagannath. So when we go in front of him on Sunday, we should also not try to blink. And also make sure our focus is on him. That he's looking at us all the time, he's not stopping his darshan towards us, and it makes him all the more merciful, all the more attractive to us. So that's a little bit about how Lord Jagannath came to be in the form that he is in, not in the two-handed Krishna form that we know from Vrindavan. And when Lord Chaitanya came to Jagannath Puri, as I mentioned, he was there for the famous festival of Rath Yatra. And Rath Yatra happens from the Jagannath temple, and the cart is drawn, and it ends at the Gundicha temple. So the Gundicha temple, the whole year, it's empty, it's vacant. And it gathers dust and dirt and debris, and it's quite a dirty temple. But a few weeks before Rath Yatra happens, it's cleaned. And normally just servants are sent to clean the temple. But Mahaprabhu himself, he went to clean this temple. And he cleaned, and everyone gathered their piles of dust outside to see whose was the biggest, and Mahaprabhu's was always the biggest. And then they washed the temple. There's a lake nearby, and they all grabbed pots of water and washed the temple. So that festival is famous in temples all over the world now. It's called Gundicha Marjanam, or the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, to prepare it for the arrival of Lord Jagannath. And Mahaprabhu, as he was cleaning the temple, he said it was like cleaning the heart. So as we physically clean the temple, we're also physically cleaning the heart, preparing Krishna to come. And so then the Gundicha temple is cleansed, and Rath Yatra begins. And Rath Yatra is such a great festival that normally in the Jagannath temple, I think up until probably a couple of weeks ago, everybody wasn't allowed to go in. It was only open to those of Indian descent. But now they've sort of disregarded that ruling. But Lord Jagannath is so merciful that he comes out onto the streets to give us darshan. He says, you don't have to come to my temple, I will come out to you. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu participated in that festival, and he, along with thousands of other devotees, he would slowly help pull the chariots towards the Gundicha temple. So we mentioned before that Lord Chaitanya is who? Krishna in the mood of Radharani. And Lord Jagannath, he is Krishna stunned. So this festival of Rath Yatra with Lord Chaitanya pulling Lord Jagannath, it's like Srimati Radharani or Lord Chaitanya is pulling Krishna. And the Gundicha temple represents Vrindavan. Because during Krishna's time, around 5,000 years ago, after Krishna had gone to Dwarka, there was an eclipse. I'll have to find out the exact the name of that day that was there. but everyone had gone to Kurukshetra to perform sacrifice, to pray. You know, it was a holy time. So everyone from Dwarka went, everyone from Vrindavan went, everyone from all over India, they went to Kurukshetra. And the gopis knew that this is our chance to see Krishna. They hadn't seen Krishna since he left after killing Kamsa, and their grief cannot be described. It cannot be explained and felt by any of us. So anyway, they went to Kurukshetra, and they saw Krishna there. But it wasn't the same Krishna that they knew from Vrindavan. He was now king. He had servants around him. He had queens around him. He wasn't dressed in his cowherd boy dress. He was now the fine silks, crowns, very nice jewelry. And they said, this isn't the same Krishna that we knew when we were growing up. So they wanted to pull Krishna back to Vrindavan. So they imagined that Krishna is seated on a chariot, and rather than horses pull him to Vrindavan, they were going to pull him back. So in that same mood, Lord Chaitanya, he pulled Krishna back. He pulled Krishna or Jagannath back to Vrindavan or the Gundicha temple. So if you go to the Gundicha temple today, it's, you know, there's still a little bit of trees and forest around it, but it's that mood that Lord Chaitanya, he is pulling Krishna back to Vrindavan. Radharani is pulling Krishna back to Vrindavan. Like she did in Kurukshetra, now she is doing from the Jagannath Puri temple to the Gundicha temple. One Amarendra Prabhu describes that Vrindavan is the fruit and Dwarka is the reflection. So when you see the fruit, you don't remember the reflection. But when you see the reflection, you remember the fruit. So when Lord Chaitanya, he was, his mood, Viraj Maharaj explains that when he was pulling the chariot that Krishna was seated on, Jagannath was seated on, towards Vrindavan or towards the Gundicha temple, that his mood internally was to relish Krishna consciousness, and externally it was to spread Krishna consciousness. And this same mood has been passed down from Lord Chaitanya, Rupa Goswami, through all the parampara systems, acharyas, to Srila Prabhupada, and now to us. So with that same mood, when we go on Sunday, while we're pulling the cart, we can imagine that I'm pulling Krishna to Vrindavan, I'm pulling Krishna into my heart. And not even into my heart, he's going back home to Vrindavan, but hopefully he will also take me home to Vrindavan. So that can be our internal mood as we're pulling the cart. But externally, this is our chance to share Krishna consciousness with everybody, in whatever capacity that we're able to, whatever floats your boat, whatever's inclined with your nature. And I think Ajay Prabhu will do a bit of an announcement afterwards too, so we can all get geared up and find some service to do. But yeah, next Sunday when we're pulling the cart, not just next Sunday, but any Rath Yatra you see, you know, some of you go to Brighton Rath Yatra, London Rath Yatra, anyone's in India, it's that mood that, you know, I'm pulling Krishna into my heart, I'm pulling Krishna into Vrindavan. And in honor of then Radhashtami, so I explained a little bit about Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra and the meaning behind it, and tomorrow being Radhashtami, I thought we could all offer a prayer to Radhashtami, but our own personal prayer. So I'm going to ask Henna and Aarti, this is just a little fun activity. As adults, we shouldn't be, you know, we can have a bit of fun like kids. So they're going to pass around some pink love hearts, and there's some pens up here. And I'm going to give everyone a few minutes in their own time to write down a little prayer to Srimati Radharani. It can be for yourself, it can be for someone else. And then we're going to decorate the altar with it so that we're offering our heart to Srimati Radharani. She offered her heart, she offered her whole life to Krishna. She said that even if my distress brings you happiness, then that's my greatest fortune. You know, for us, a slight inconvenience, if we're faced to give someone happiness, we're like, oh, you know, begrudgingly we say, fine, I'll do it for you. But Srimati Radharani, she only existed for the pleasure of Sri Krishna. So maybe we can ask for a drop of her mercy, whatever it is, but take a few minutes to sort of write down your personal prayer from your heart to Srimati Radharani, and we'll decorate the altar with that. in Gujarati as well if you'd like. So any prayer from your heart, you can write to Srimati Radharani. She fulfills everything. I'm not saying ask for any TV or, pass your exams or something. But whatever you want, maybe that it's that whatever you're currently doing, you do it with a bit more devotion and consciousness to Krishna. You can offer something to him. If you're struggling with something, maybe you can ask for her help. Help me be more focused in my chanting. Help me be more focused in my reading. Help me to understand your mood and mission. Help me to serve the other devotees. Help me to have pure thought. Whatever it is. But something in that mood that it's not for me. I'm trying to please Krishna. It's selfless love. It doesn't matter what I get out of it, but what can I give to you? You can leave it anonymously. She'll know. And when you're ready, please sort of put your hand up.